Dokkan, over its near 10 years of life, has released many a unit, some amazing, some solid, and some not so great. Today, we'll be going over the top 10 units that were power crept and fell from grace far too quickly. Please note that these lists are carefully calculated through an intense algorithm. And without further ado, let's get on with the list. And coming in at number 10, we have LR Namek Goku. LR Namek Goku leads the legendary existence or Super Saiyan categories for 3 key, 170% to HP and attack, and 150% to defense. On his 12 key super, he stacks defense, and on his 18 key super, he stacks attack. His passive skill, the Super Saiyan's Final Showdown, gives himself 2 key and 159% attack and defense start a turn. He launches an additional super attack within the same turn after receiving an attack. Essentially, if he gets hit before he attacks, he'll launch an additional super attack. He gets 59% attack and a medium chance of launching an additional super attack in slot 2 or 3. He gets 1 key at the start of each turn up to 3, and 59% attack when there's an extreme class category enemy. Well, extreme class isn't really a category, but you know what I mean. Performs a critical hit when there is an enemy whose name includes Phizer. His active skill, the Angry Kamehameha, which is oh so iconic. The active skill condition is that it can be activated with one enemy whose HP is 30% or below and their extreme class. And essentially it plays a really pretty animation and does a bit of damage. His link set isn't half bad. He doesn't have too many key links to where he'll struggle to get his 12 key super. He's essentially got every category under the sun. And honestly, the real reason that he finds himself on this list is when he came out during the 2021 Worldwide Download Celebration, he was great. He was top 3 for sure, competing for the best unit in the game with LR AGO UI Goku and AGO LR Full Power Frieza. But when Red Zone released, 4 short months after his release with the 7th year anniversary, he got blasted and exposed. His start of turn defense was never really that impressive. And when Red Zone stepped up the start of turn enemy attack strength, Namek Goku folded like bread. You couldn't put him in slot 1 because he was too weak defensively for slot 1, which meant that you couldn't get that guaranteed additional super attack, which meant that you had to run him in slot 2 or 3, and you only had a 30% chance of launching an additional super attack there. And honestly, all around it was just kind of cursed. All in all, Namek Goku was only really good for not even half a year, and a Dokkan Fest LR of his caliber shouldn't be only good for a few short months. And coming in at number 9, we have EZA Tech Super Saiyan 3 Broly. Now on release, EZA Tech Super Saiyan 3 Broly wasn't all that bad. He was the first of the 120% leaders to EZA. He had respectable damage and some okay defense. But as the other 120% leaders began to get their EZAs, it was very apparent that EZA Super Saiyan 3 Broly was very underpowered. For instance, his super attack did not give him any attack or defense, and only massively lowered defense, which is terrible. His passive skill, Overwhelming Power, gave him 120% attack and defense start a turn, respectable for the time, and then he gets 12% attack and negative 6% defense per key sphere obtained. Essentially, he kept his weakness from his pre-EZA counterpart, in which he lost defense per key sphere obtained, which is not great as a nuker. He also had a 30% chance of launching an additional super attack with 3 or more key spheres obtained. He also, of course, has a wonky link set as a Super Saiyan 3 character. He does not have Over in a Flash and is rather a prepared for battle character, which is very odd. He's of course on no teams, and he's wonky. Honestly, characters like this, Exchange Boo, and LR Super 17, all of which are Extreme Tech, are why Extreme Tech Extreme Super Battle Road was so hard for so long, because they designed these characters terribly. As soon as the other 120% EZAs came out, it was made very evident very quickly that EZA Super Saiyan 3 Broly was just not up to snuff. And he aged out of the meta quick. He never really ever even got a chance to shine for real. But that's EZA Tech Super Saiyan 3 Broly. He comes in at number 9. Moving on to number 8. And coming in at number 8, you got Int Super Saiyan 3 Goku and Tech Majin Vegeta. Now these guys were extremely solid when they first released. They had respectable levels of attack and defense in their base forms, and although they didn't have very good leader skills, with Int Super Saiyan 3 Goku leading Otherworld Warriors in the Super Saiyan 3 category, and Tech Majin Vegeta leading Super Saiyan 2 and Resurrected Warriors, they still managed to get by as a respectable dual Dokkan Fest, even though this is honestly one of the more forgettable dual Dokkan festivals of all time. Essentially, in base forms, they had the same passive. They both got 100% attack and defense, and they flipped when they got more defense. For Int Super Saiyan 3 Goku, in his base form of Super Saiyan 2, he got a defensive boost of up to 60%, with the more HP remaining, the greater the boost, and up to a 60% attack buff, the less HP remaining, the greater the boost. Majin Vegeta was the opposite in his base form of Super Saiyan 2. They both also got 30% attack and defense with 3 or more key spheres obtained, and they both were able to transform starting from turn 3 when facing only one enemy, 80% HP or more. They both had some solid links. Notably, Vegeta had both Prepared for Battle and Royal Lineage, which although the link level update wasn't out yet, it would come about 6 months after, which would give him a sizable little buff. They both had a lot of categories, especially Goku. And once they transformed, they again were relatively similar. They both got 50% chances to stun on their super attack effects. Vegeta's Final Flash gave him a 50% defensive buff, and Goku's Super Kamehameha gave him a 50% attack buff. Their passive skills both gave him 120% attack and defense. They once again got the flipped boost of attack and defense depending on HP, with Vegeta getting more attack with more HP and more defense with less HP, and Super Saiyan 3 Goku getting vice versa. Now where they differed a little bit is that Super Saiyan 3 Goku would get 33% attack and defense when attacking, along with 33% dodge chance with 3 or more key spheres, and super effective against all types with 6 or more key spheres. However, Majin Vegeta would get super effective against all types with 3 key spheres, and then guard with 6 key spheres. They both also changed from Prepared for Battle key link units to Over in a Flash key link units, which is never really ideal. You kind of want to keep your key link set or your main key link consistent throughout your kit. But essentially why this dual Dokkan Fest finds themselves on this list is they were really forgettable. They were pretty good when they released. Obviously they weren't like better than STR Cooler or something, but they were very respectable, and then they just kinda fell off. Honestly, this is one of the more forgettable dual Dokkan Fests ever. It was awesome that they were getting representation, but it was just never meant to be with this dual Dokkan Fest. Which is unfortunate because this is one of the bigger fights in the show, but that's Int Super Saiyan 3 Angel Goku and Tech Majin Vegeta at number 8. Moving on to number 7. Now coming in at number 7 we have SGR Kefla, and while she got a great easy A, she spent most of her life cycle as a kind of mid-unit, which was crazy because when she first came out, she was competing with Cooler and Beerus, TUR STR Cooler and TUR Physical Beerus were the best TUR in the game. She stacks attack on her super attack effect, and her passive skill gave her start of turn defense and all her attack on super attack, which is how you used to want it, as support would greatly, or rather buff more, units who get their attack on super. She also got 50% attack and a 50% chance to dodge with 6 or more key spheres obtained. On turn 3, she would transform into her Super Saiyan state, and she continued to stack attack, now got 150% defense start of turn, and 150% attack when performing a super attack, and got the same 50% attack and a high chance of dodging with 6 or more key spheres obtained, 50%. And then, when she comes back again, provided that her HP is above 60%, she would transform into Super Saiyan 2 Kefla, and she was pretty good in this form. Her passive skill, I'm the Strongest, gave her 2 key, 160% defense, and 160% attack when performing a super attack. And she got a baseline 50% chance to dodge just built in, no orbs necessary, and then she launched an additional super attack with 6 or more key spheres obtained. She also had an active skill, Let's Wreck Some Faces, oh boy. The condition is that it can be activated provided that there is a Pure Saiyan or Universal Survival Saga category enemy. and essentially it changed physical key spheres to STR key spheres and made her super effective against all types. Not really anything crazy, but solid for the time. She also, as a Universe 6 female Saiyan, had great links and was on a healthy plethora of teams. She also released with 2 very good TUR Awakenings rather, in Tech Caulifla and STR Kale. But really 2020 was just a very bizarre year for Dokkan. All the releases in the first half of 2020, I'd really say up until Tech Ultimate Gohan, were just very odd, wonky releases that really just did not age well in the meta. Kefla, as a TUR who was competing to be the best TUR in, the game for her time, fell off way faster than STR Cooler and Physical Beerus did, which honestly is rather unfortunate. But her 50% dodge chance being locked behind key spheres when she doesn't create her own key spheres is just rather eh. And sure, she creates key spheres on her active skill, but that's not until turn 5, and when she already has her dodge built into her kit. She really was just a big sitting duck, especially in her base form. If you didn't get her 6 key spheres in her base form, she was cooked. But that's STR Kefla. She comes in at number 7. Moving on to number 6. And coming in at number 6, you have Tech Bardock, a somewhat recent unit. Bardock's leader skill was Goku Family or Timeless Legends, categories 3 key and 170% attack and defense and HP, and then also gave an additional 30% buff for the full 200% buff to Pure Saiyan category allies on both of those prior 2 teams. Bardock's super attack gave him 50% attack and defense for the turn, which is a pretty respectable buff. Bardock's passive, Resisting a Doomed Future, plays a really great intro animation, provided that you have a Goku ally or a Frieza enemy. Once he activated his intro animation, he changed a random type of key sphere to rainbow key spheres, got 70% attack, and had a super attack scouter for 5 turns. He also got 2 key, 150% attack and defense start a turn, 40% attack and defense with each super attack performed, with a max of 120%, and then became super effective against all types with 1 key sphere obtained. That was Rainbow. He also got a further 50% attack and defense when collecting at least 2 Rainbow key spheres, and performed a guaranteed crit when getting 3 or more Rainbow key spheres. He also had an active skill, the Final Spirit Cannon, and its effect was it did some damage. Not really all that great damage because he doesn't stack attack and does guaranteed crits for the turn. The condition is that it can be activated when there are 3 or more Team Bardock category allies on the team, starting from turn 3, or if HP is 50% or below starting from turn 5, which honestly isn't a bad restriction. He also has very good links. Notably, he's got Saiyan Lineage and Prepared for Battle, 2 very big key links. He's on a solid amount of categories, and honestly, when he released, he was very good. The super attack scouter and his really good leader skill made him pretty decent. But he just very, very, very quickly fell off. Units that released around him were just way better than him. And you can really just attribute this to his really bad start of turn defense. Honestly, it's just his numbers aren't big enough. And he became pretty much unrunnable, or very much so mid, a few short months after his release. Units like the Gammas, Int Yamcha, all aged far better than this guy did. And mainly it's also because he doesn't have any built-in additionals, or any strong defensive capabilities. And units who do that just never really age that well. While he does have the super attack scouter, it's honestly like some STR Super Vegito type beat, where sure the scouter is great, but if you just foresee your own death due to running this guy, are you really, benefiting yourself? Are you actually just at a net negative? That's how it be. And that's Tech Bardock. He comes in at number 6, moving on to number 5. And unfortunately, coming in at number 5, we've got LRAGO, Blue Goku and Vegeta, who fuse into Vegito Blue. Now, straight up, they got one of the best leader skills in the entire game. Even still, their leader skill is Battle of Fate, Future Saga, and Power Beyond Super Saiyan category allies, 3 key, 170% across the board. And then they also give the full 200% buff to allies who are on both of those teams, who are also on Realm of Gods, or Time Travelers. They also give just regular vanilla superclass 3 key and 150% across the board. Not bad. Their super attack effects are that they raise attack on 12 key and raise defense on 18 key. Their entrance animation plays, and then they get 100% defense and guards all attacks for 4 turns, provided that there's another Future Saga category ally on the team when they pop up. They also get 3 key and 100% attack and defense start of turn. They get an additional 2 key spheres per type key sphere obtained. They get 50% attack and defense and super effective against all types when there's a Realm of Gods category enemy, and 150% defense and a 50% chance to dodge as the first attacker in the turn. They also get 100% attack and 50% defense and launch an additional attack that has a 50% chance of being a super attack as the second or third attacker in a turn, and launch an additional super attack when key is 20 or more. So essentially what you want to do with them is leave them in slot 1 for those first 4 turns while they have their guard, massive defensive buff, and 50% chance to dodge in slot 1, because they really don't do any damage. They kind of just suck offensively. But they were very good defensively, especially for the hardest content at the time, Int Merge Zamasu of the Dismal Future Red Zone. Their active skill condition for their Patar Fusion was that it could be activated when HP was 70% or less starting on turn 5, or when there's another future category ally attacking in the same turn, or future enemy starting from turn 7. They also have really, really good links, and they're on a bajillion teams. But once they fused, it got real. Vegito Blue was very good. And honestly, he's still pretty decent. His super attack effects give him 50% attack and defense on both. He lowers attack and defense on 12 key and raises superclass allies by 50% on 18 key. His passive skill, All-Rounder's Grand Performance, gives him 5 key, 250% attack and defense baseline. He gets 2 key per key sphere obtained, not just type key sphere. He's super effective against all types, guaranteed, built in. He gets 30% damage reduction before attacking. He gets 20% damage reduction baseline. High chance of evading an enemy's attack, 50%, and launches an additional super attack with a 50% chance of being a super attack in slot 1. He launches a guaranteed additional super attack, and then a 30% of launching another additional super attack in slot 2 or 3. And then he launches an additional super attack when he launches his active skill, or key is 20 or more. He also has another active skill. He has 2, the God Impact. The condition is that it can be activated when HP is 50% or less, or when facing an enemy whose HP is 50% or less. And essentially what it does is it plays a really nice animation and gives him guaranteed dodge for the turn, which is very good. He also, of course, as a Vegito Blue unit, just has an amazing link set, although no prepared for battle. And honestly, once he fuses, he's very good. But the problem is that his active skill condition is very bad. And once you lose the guard and the additional 100% defense that this unit gets with their intro animation, they just kind of fall off very heavy. And if you don't have the Patar Fusion up, you're kind of just cooked. Once content started deviating from that super short type of content with the Dismal Future Red Zone, and more towards our current hard fights with Cell Max, movie Boss Rush Red Zone, SGR Blue Gogeta, and fights like that, his weaknesses were very quickly exposed. And even still, he was getting slapped up. In base, the Blue Goku and Vegeta, even with their guard, they're still getting kind of cooked by STR Sword of Hope Trunks in that fight. It's just really unfortunate because this was such a huge celebration, man. This is one of the biggest celebrations ever. And honestly, just what the doctor ordered. We all wanted a fusing Blue Vegito for the longest. And I believe this is the first actual Blue Goku and Blue Vegeta that we've gotten in the game. But unfortunately, Dokkan kind of missed the mark on this. And now, they're kinda just in limbo. They're still a solid unit, I could even say a good unit, but they've aged a little too fast for my taste. They were kicked off the superhero team 4 short months after their release, which I personally believe is not ideal for a huge, super hype Dual Dokkan Fest worldwide download celebration. But that's Vegito. He comes in at number 5, moving on to number 4. Now, coming in at number 4, we got Tech Pan. Now, Tech Pan, when she came out, she was really good, competing for the best TUR in the game, and she was cooking up the hardest fight in the game at the time, which was Red Zone Broly. She led the Bond of Friendship and Seeker of the Dragon Ball category and gave the 200% to GT heroes. Her super attack effect only stacked attack and gave a 30% chance to stun. Again, giving units no defense on their super attack effect will just never be ideal. It's just very, very bad. Not a good idea. And she also had a unit super attack, multiple unit super attacks for that matter. One with GT Goku, one with Trunks GT, and one with Giru. They all essentially did the same thing except Goku's gives a 70% chance to stun rather than the 50% chance that the Giru and Trunks ones do. They all upgrade her to greatly stacking attack. Her passive skill, We Are Super Strong, gives her 150% attack and defense start a turn, 50% attack and defense when attacking, and she gets 2 key, 50% attack, and 50% damage reduction until she launches an attack. While in slot 1, she also gets 20% attack and defense per attack performed, up to 100%. And then she performs an additional attack that has a 50% chance of being a super attack if there is a GT Heroes category ally attacking in the same turn, whose name includes Goku, Trunks, or Giru. So essentially, what you wanted to do was stack up her attack by doing unit super attacks and doing additional super attacks so that you could launch her super powerful active skill, which was just a nuclear bomb, man. This thing hit hard. Her active skill, the Trump Card Kamehameha, was able to be used when 5 or more attacks have been launched, and that there is a GT Hero category ally attacking in the same turn, whose name includes Goku. And essentially what it did was it gave her a 59% chance to perform a critical hit, and it did a lot of damage. And I mean a lot of damage. This thing could easily one-shot Red Zone Broly. That's how hard it hit. She also has solid links, mainly Saiyan lineage and All in the Family, powerful links for her to use. GT, of course, not to be slept on as well. But overall, she was really good on release, but quickly after her release, she was exposed for certain aspects of her kit, which were very wonky or poorly designed. Eventually, she started getting obliterated after she launched her attack in slot 1, as she loses her 50% damage reduction, and she's weaker defensively after she launches a super attack, which is very odd. And that content also just got harder for her. Her team also was never really that good, and once the team fell apart around her, she also was exposed for not having that great of a leader skill. She had a solid one, but not a great one. She was similar to STR Videl in the sense that she was the team, right? You were designing your team to stack her up and launch her super powerful active skill. And once that became really not worth it and really a liability, if anything, she just very, very quickly fell off the map and aged a lot worse than some of the TUR counterparts that released around her, like AGL Captain Guinea, for example. That's Tech Pan though. She comes in at number 4. Let's move on to the top 3. Now coming in at number 3 is, unfortunately, LR Int Full Power Super Saiyan 4 Goku. So Int LR Super Saiyan 4 Goku has a solid leader skill. He gives GT heroes and full power category allies the 170% buff across the board, and he gives pure and hybrid Saiyan categories the full 200%. His super attack effects give him 30% defense on his 12 key and gives him 30% defense for multiple turns, up to 4 turns on his 18 key. He also lowered attack on his 12. His passive skill, Miraculous Saiyan Fighter at his peak, gives him 3 key, 150% attack and defense. Start a turn, an additional key sphere per key sphere obtained, 70% attack when performing a super attack, and a 50% chance of performing a crit if it's an 18 key, 70% attack within the same turn, and an additional 70% defense for 3 turns after receiving or an evading an attack. He got 20% baseline damage reduction and 70% defense and an additional 20% damage reduction as the first attacker in the turn, aka slot 1. He also had his standby skill, but before we get to that, we should talk about his links. His links were very good as a GT Super Saiyan 4. Obviously, these units have great links. He's got great links like Prepared for Battle, Shocking Speed, GT, Saiyan Roar. Just very, very good dominant links. His standby could be activated once this character receives 5 or more attacks, and who essentially is a dominant beast of a tank. He had no super attack effect, and he's unable to attack at all, honestly. But his passive skill gave him 300% defense, 10% damage reduction per type key sphere obtained, and guaranteed guard when 3 or more type key spheres were obtained for 1 turn. He also gave all allies 3 key and 70% defense for multiple turns, 2 turns. Obviously, that multiple turn defensive support was very good. He also created his own key spheres to int key spheres, and also nullifies unarmed super attacks directed at the character. Once you got enough key orbs, provided that you got the full 30, you could transform into full power Super Saiyan 4 Goku, who was very good. He gave himself 30% attack and defense on 12 key, while also greatly lowering enemy attack. The times 10 Kamehameha, his 18 key super attack, gave him 50% attack for the turn and raised his defense by 30% for 4 turns. His passive skill, Unadulterated Full Power, gave himself 77% HP recovery upon his first appearance. He guards all attacks for 1 turn at the start of turn and gets guaranteed crits for 3 turns. He got 7 key and 200% attack and defense baseline, an additional 2 key per int or rainbow key sphere obtained, and 1 key sphere for all others. He got 150% attack when performing a super attack, and a great chance of performing a critical hit if it's an 18 key super attack. And this guy just lived at 24 key, honestly. It was so free to get him eyeing the key. He got 59% attack and perform a critical hit if key is 24, which again, as I said, is free. He gets 77% defense for 5 turns after receiving or evading an attack. 25% damage reduction built in, and an additional 25% damage reduction and 77% defense as the first attacker in the turn, slot 1. He also, of course, has his super dominant link set, making things for him in terms of key very easy. Essentially, what happened, why Super Saiyan 4 Goku aged way too fast, was that, again, a fight like Merge the Masu, and really, honestly, the STR Goku Black fight, the Tech Cell fight, pretty much all the fights in there just cooked this guy in his base form. He wasn't terrible in his base form, but he was very quickly exposed as not being good enough defensively. He would just get one shot obliterated in those newer fights, and it was very unfortunate for him because he was very, very good Omega Shenron fight. But these new shorter fights where Super Saiyan Full Power Goku couldn't come out, or where Super Full Power Saiyan 4 Goku, odd name, but you know, Full Power Super Saiyan 4 Goku, when he couldn't come out in those shorter fights, it just ended up to him getting exposed. Also, the fact that he gets his passive defense when he dodges, but needs to be hit to launch his standby, is just rather poor design on Dokkan's part, and leads to dodges feeling very bad for this guy. And of course, he's got 5 built-in dodge, so good luck with that. That's Full Power Super Saiyan 4 Goku, though. He comes in at number 3. And now it really, really, truly pains me to do this, but coming in at number 2, we have the LR Blue Fusions, who were, of course, on the release during the 5th year anniversary, were the best units in the game. And by the time Extreme Category Super Battle Road rolled around, about 5 months later, 6 months later, they were honestly unrunnably bad. It was very, very unfortunate. But their base forms being so weak defensively really just ended up getting them burnt bad. Now, I'm sure everybody knows what the Blue Fusions do, but they essentially stack attack in their base forms. They get a 50% chance to dodge in slot 3 prior to the EZA, and they just kind of blow balls defensively. If they get hit, you die. They then transform on turn 4, and then they build up. And once they were fully built up, they were still very, very impressive. It's just that in the hardest content in the game, which changed from the legendary Goku event when the Blue Fusions released, to Extreme Category Super Battle Road, when I believe AGL Bardock released for Saiyan Day, they just kind of ended up getting cooked. Because like with full power Super Saiyan 4 Goku, they need time to build up. Again, they were very impressive when fully built up, but when you don't have enough time to fully build up with them, you know, it'd be turn 6, turn 7, turn 8, once you finally have the chance to fully build up with them, they're sitting ducks for every other turn, especially turns 1 through 3. That combined with they cannot build up in slot 3 once they transform, they just kinda got exposed. And they were honestly probably the fastest aging anniversary units ever. Which is honestly really unfortunate because I think that these are the biggest releases in Dokkan history, man. These are probably the most iconic Dokkan units in the entire game's history, right? Like, I don't think that's a crazy thing to say. The blue fusions for the 50th year anniversary is far and away the most hype anniversary in my opinion. So it's unfortunate that they find themselves here on this list at the number 2 spot. But let's go on to number 1. And coming in at number 1, we've got STR Super Vegeta. Now, when this guy came out, he was a game changer. He was the best TUR in the game. He led the best team in the game, Pure Saiyans. He did guaranteed crits on his super attacks. He did really, really good damage. He couldn't be slowed down by type disadvantage due to doing critical hits guaranteed. He had solid defense and really good damage. He also had an active skill, which could be activated when HP is 50% or more starting from turn 5, or when this character receives an attack and there is a cell enemy. And it gives him 5 key, 50% attack for the turn, and you know, he does the finger point, and he's like, oh yeah! But honestly, this guy just ended up being annihilated. I mean, just destroyed by the red zone meta. He fell off so hard, man. So hard. It was ridiculous. I've never seen a unit go from like the top pinnacle, best TUR in the game, pretty much undoubtedly, to just like out of the top 10 so fast. And it's honestly because of the biggest power cliff in this game's history, the red zone meta, man. Making like 95% of all Dokkan units just irrelevant. And honestly, his EZA is kind of similar, right? Where his EZA is not bad by any means, but is he like super dominant EZA, like one of the best EZAs ever? No chance. He could have been a lot better, even though he's solid. And I think STR Super Vegeta was the fastest aging, or just one of the worst hero to zero characters that has ever released in this game's history. But STR Super Vegeta is going to round off my list. Let me know what you thought of my list down below. Let me know if you thought that there were snubs on this list, if you thought other units should have been on the list, or if you think the order should have been different. But just know that if you disagree with me and the algorithm, you're wrong. But that's going to do it for me, and as always, thanks for stopping by.